All right, folks, welcome back to Getting Personal. This is an idea that I started back in the summer of 2022, so it's been a while. And I think in that time, I put up 3 videos, the last of which was in November of 2024. So it's been a long time. But this is not a job for me. This is a hobby. I do it as I like and as thoughts come to me. But I'm really going to make an effort to try to put more of these types of videos that are finance adjacent, financial independence, retirement adjacent, but not really related to just the purely financial aspects of it. It's more about the psychology, the thought process, and all of those things that go along with this ride that we are all on. So yeah, this is going to be video number 4 in that series. Today is Tuesday, August 19, 2025. I like to put timestamps on my videos so that when I go back and look later, I know what environment we're in when I'm talking about things, what have you. And I think it helps viewers too to figure out what's going on. So what's been on my mind lately? Well, it's basically a version of comparing yourself to others or keeping up with the Joneses or what have you. So what happened was that this past weekend, I played pickleball with like one of the biggest heirs to the Pillsbury fortune. This is, the Pillsbury Doughboy and all that. And, at the time that I was playing with him, I didn't really know who he was. All I know was, hey, this is John. He's an older gentleman, and we're playing pickleball and having fun. But I'm playing up at a friend's house up in Rancho Santa Fe, so that's already one key giveaway. It's like the most expensive zip code in the U.S. or one of the top 3 for sure. So I knew people up there had wealth, but it was only after I played this guy John that I realized how much wealth we're talking about. So turns out he's John Pillsbury Snyder III. So there you go. And, just ridiculously wealthy, at least compared to mere mortals like you and I. And then later that same day, I attended a graduation party for a high school student who is one of my girlfriend's students. And, I was asked if I wanted to come to this party. It's going to be at, their house in La Jolla, which is another super expensive zip code. And, my first response was, well, I don't know this girl, but I'm happy to come as, the significant other and, kind of show my support. So I said, sure, if the family's willing to have me. And sure enough, they did. So, that afternoon we went and it was great. I met a bunch of young kids that are graduating high school. There were a few that were still, junior and starting their senior year in high school, but the vast majority of the 25 kids that were there were high school graduates. And what struck me was that these were all super accomplished kids, for sure, or young adults, I should say. I should give them some credit. I'm talking to some of them. There were twins that are going to Yale to be, medical doctors. Both of them, they come from a family of doctors. There was a guy that's going to be going to MIT to study engineering. I met a young lady that's going to Berkeley. You name it, they were represented. So you had Yale, you had MIT, Berkeley, Columbia, Oxford, and they were going into these crazy fields that they had, dreams of from when they were young kids, which to me is already amazing because when I was 18, I certainly didn't know what I was going to do. But these young adults seemed to have it all together. They were very well spoken. They had clearly defined goals. And just talking to them, you knew they were a cut above. And what struck me afterwards as I got home was that, by all measures, I am doing pretty well. When I look at the metrics, supposedly I'm in the top 2% of the US population, which is, nothing to sneeze at. But then I realized that these kids and the guy that I was playing pickleball with is in a completely different league. Not only were they in the top 1% for sure, but they were in some strata of that 1%. And to be completely honest, it did make me feel a little bit inadequate. I don't know if that's even the right word. It felt like my accomplishments were not up to that level. Granted, I was not born into a wealthy family. Uh, I didn't grow up in a wealthy family. It's, we came here as immigrants with nothing. So I do realize how far I've gone given where I started. But there was a side of me that was like, why can't I work just a little harder, do a little more, and get to at least some of the levels that the folks that I met that day were at? And after thinking about it some more, it made me realize that I was doing what I try to preach against, which is to not keep up with the Joneses, um, not go for this, like competition, because you don't really know what their lives are. You may get a general idea just based on income and all that, but you don't know what the day to day would look like. So after a good 24 hours, I did take a step back, and it did make me think of two books that I want to share as part of this story, because the series is nothing more than just stories and thoughts that come into my head. I'm not even sure that we have real lessons to come out of these. I guess the lesson here is don't keep up with the Joneses, or in this case, don't keep up with the Pillsbury. But that's not really, I think, the main lesson. So the two books I want to share is that one is by Evan Osnes. He's a New York Times columnist, and he writes long form. And the book that Osnes has is called "The Haves and the Have-Yachts," which I think is a great title. I mean, it's a great play on words, but it's really talking about even within that top strata of the 1%, you have varying levels, and it's just ridiculous, how much wealth disparity there is in this country. So that's one book that I would recommend that you read. The other one is from Jack Bogle, the founder of Vanguard. He wrote a very short book called Enough. And enough is basically talking about, figure out what's enough for you. What are your values? What actions are you willing to take to accomplish those values and stay within your principle? And realize that what is your enough may not be, what someone else is enough. And not to try to compare yourself too much to others. I mean, I think it's good to have a sense of ambition and competition. It always drives things. It always drives you to do your best. But I think it was Mark Twain that says comparison is the thief of joy. And it really is true. You can take it a little bit too much, and then you're going to be in a bad mood or whatever. But to me, the weekend was just really like that stark reminder that as well as I have done for myself, there are always going to be people that are that much further ahead than me. And to try to catch them and compete with them and all that is pretty futile. I need to decide for myself what is my enough, what makes me happy, and just live my life rather than compare mine to others. So I don't know, I don't know what lessons to be drawn from this, but it's just the thought and the stories that came to me over this past couple of days that I really thought was interesting. And in some ways, this is just a record of me sharing my own inner monologue. If you find it useful, that's even better. But that's all I have for today. Like I said at the beginning, I really hope to begin doing more of these types of videos that are adjacent to, finance and what have you, but not strictly about the numbers per se. In any case, I hope you have a great day and rest of the week, and I'll catch you in the next one. See you later.